You know, I've been doing this a long time, watching patterns, following cycles, listening to the spaces between things, not just what's happening, but why. It's not just research or headlines for me. It's been a lifelong study of the seen and unseen, economics, business, technology, metaphysics, astrology, consciousness, energy, those subtle forces that shape our lives before we even notice them. Even all the conspiracies and alternative theories, as wild as they might have been, I learned what I could with an open mind. I've gone down the rabbit holes for decades, sure, but I've also gone inward through meditation, initiation, shadow work, and those long nights of the soul that most people try to avoid. And I can tell you, being awake early isn't glamorous. It's lonely. You lose friends. Family thinks you're, out there, weird. You've changed too much. You start speaking a language that others don't quite understand. Yet there's freedom in it. When you see beyond the veil, you can't go back to pretending. You trade belonging for clarity, and clarity, it comes with a price. But here's the thing. The world is starting to catch up, and the real divide that will unfold, that is already unfolding, will be about who is awake to the undercurrents and who will continue to choose to be ignorant to them, unwilling to even see, resistance to truth, and embraces the illusions with a white-knuckled grip. This February, while Pluto is transforming power and the collective in Aquarius for the next 20 years, and Uranus accelerates everything in Gemini for the next 7 years, Saturn and Neptune are going to meet exactly between those two planets at 0 degrees of Aries, the world point. That's where the invisible becomes visible. Saturn's going to say, here's the truth. And Neptune's going to say, well, can you see through the fog? And when they meet, the illusions give way to revelation. Every veil starts to thin, political, historical, spiritual, personal, and you can already see it. Mainstream narratives are cracking, independent journalists are flooding platforms like X, posting primary source footage that never makes it to TV. Governments are quietly declassifying long-buried files, JFK, MLK, and others, exposing layers of manipulation that many of us sensed years ago. Military movements in the Arctic, current and strange theories about what's under the ice in Antarctica, what we've been told about the moon and Mars is now changing. You know that there was a formal press conference in September that called out the evidence they found showing life exists and existed on Mars. But you were intentionally distracted to think something else was probably more important at the time. Strange alignments in energy, economics, different systems out there. You could feel the chessboard shifting all over the geopolitical and demographic landscapes of the world. Nations and regions are completely reprioritizing economic, military, and cultural policies. Some of these make sense, while others don't, and we're starting to see why now. We're seeing new scans beneath the Giza pyramids and the Sphinx, columns and structures that go down thousands of feet, chambers exactly where the ancients said they'd be, the so-called halls of Amenti, where the Akashic records are stored. Even Edgar Cayce's century-old prophecies are starting to sound more like coordinates than mysticism. And then there's a conversation nobody can dodge anymore, the extraterrestrials. Not clickbait, congressional testimony, unclassified videos, an accelerating number of video footage uploaded on the daily from all over the world. Pilots, scientists, government officials even making statements about long-standing relationships with extraterrestrials and governments that point to influencing our technology based on secret agreements that we are just finding out about that are very hard to digest. Now, academics are finally saying openly that maybe humanity's own DNA didn't happen by accident, that there was intentional genetic intervention in our evolution. Greg Braden, who's been around for decades talking about these things, said it on Joe Rogan's podcast last week, that we were engineered, that our genome carries signatures that don't fit the Darwinian script, that the accepted, pushed history of our species and planet are unraveling to reveal a much deeper, fascinating narrative that will help to connect a lot of the unconnected dots of evidence that has been routinely denied by the antiquated political structures of archaeology, history, and science. Now, imagine how that shakes religion, science, the foundation of our identity and reality itself. So that's Saturn Neptune, reality and myth colliding at the threshold. You know, the old Capricornian world order, right? When Pluto was in Capricorn since 2008, government, finance, healthcare, education, media, pick an industry or category, it's wobbling because control can't hold when consciousness rises and information is not controlled like it used to be. We're watching financial institutions struggle to adapt, currencies strain, insurance giants backing away from risk because it's too chaotic and unpredictable now. People are realizing that many of the stories sold as for our safety or for the good of society were built on fear, profit, power, preservation, and control. Digital discernment has actually become the survival skill. So, meanwhile, technology is moving faster than ideology or markets can even keep up with. I mean, look at AI, quantum computing, robotics, digital currency. They're not separate trends, actually. They're one convergence. Like Bitcoin, okay, born in 2009, that has a birth chart in astrology that can be analyzed. Its astrology blueprint and current planetary transits mirror the revolution and decentralization of finance and money. It outperformed every asset class on Earth. Again, Saturn, Neptune, invisible math becoming tangible value. Quantum computing, conscious algorithms, frequency healing. The boundary between material and metaphysical is evaporating. The dream world is coding itself into reality. Archaeologists keep unearthing artifacts that rewrite timelines. There are objects out there right now that are getting carbon dated to 12,000 years old that have weird writings on them. Right when global floods and civilizations are rebooted, pyramids still humming with unexplained resonance. Hieroglyphs showing sky beams, energy tools, light technology. Cultures, oceans apart, telling the same story in different tongues with similar symbols and archetypes. The gatekeepers of history, archaeology, anthropology, are being forced to admit they don't know as much as they thought, and that scientism and authoritative cognitive dissonance got in the way of advancing the perspective of our past. Because evidence doesn't bow to authority. Those of us who've watched these patterns for decades can feel it, see it, that deep hum beneath everything saying the truth is surfacing, right? I mean, and that's our origins. I mean, what about current and recent events? What if you were told about significant narratives regarding like the pandemic and the forced solution of it, and what your government and media have been telling you about how certain things went down on a variety of topics suddenly couldn't be hidden anymore? What if you started seeing certain people being arrested and brought to trial, and the evidence can't be hidden by the media anymore? I mean, minds are going to be blown wide open. All right? Being awake isn't superiority. It's sensitivity. It's not about proving you're right. It's about surviving reality as it morphs. Okay? You've probably been called crazy, dramatic, or conspiratorial if you're in this kind of group. You've probably stayed quiet to keep the peace. But you're not wrong for seeing what others can't yet. You've already been through the initiations, the breakdowns, the rebuilds, the late night, am I losing it, moments. That was all preparation. Because as the world wakes up, confusion's going to spread like wildfire. When illusions collapse, people lose their center. And that's when they'll need you, not to preach, but to embody calm, to demonstrate detachment, to remind them that truth and peace can coexist, that the intentional segregation of the masses into divided groups bent on destroying one another in one way or another is also a part of the long plan to keep us distracted and paying attention to the wrong things, believing that they were real and important when they're really not. They really aren't. That's your role now. Not as a big spotlight and loudspeaker, knocking on doors or holding up signs, but kind of like the Hermit on the tarot card. A peaceful soul carrying a small lantern of truth, and to share that light to those who approach with openness. Okay? What's coming isn't the end of the world. It's the end of the false world. Yeah, it's messy. It's not a shutdown, but a reset. on almost every level of our shared consensus reality, what we all agree on for all this time about how we see things. But chaos is initiation. It's actually how consciousness evolves, by breaking its own shell. So when the noise starts peaking, and it's starting to, when disclosures are accelerating, which they are, when reality feels unstable, remember, you chose this timeline. You came to see through the veil before it tore open. You came to help others cross when the light gets really blinding. That moment is now, okay? You are not alone. Even if you do feel isolated, your resonance connects you to millions awakening in their own way all over the world. We're a constellation of souls tuning to the same frequency, okay? Truth, consciousness, love. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction marks a new epoch where imagination becomes structure and structure becomes fluid. Okay, so breathe, ground in your soul, let all this static fall away by exercising this evolving, open, and inviting but vigilant level of discernment. Okay, the world is catching up to what you already knew. Or you are just now seeing through the fog. Maybe just one aspect, just one story or arena, just one angle of approach to the whole thing. Okay, and this right here is the beginning of something extraordinary. Stay steady, stay kind, stay resonant. Okay? So if this resonates, stick with me, because it's only going to get noisier out there, and you'll want voices that help you stay centered, okay, not spun. So follow, subscribe, share this with your tribe, and if you want to go deeper, by zooming out into the astrology, the cycles, the initiations, behind the chaos, check out my book on Amazon that talks about all this. It gets into the real architecture of what's unfolding, the why beneath the world's unraveling. For help and insight into how this is affecting you personally, schedule a session with me. Stay awake, stay grounded, stay resonant. I'll see you in the next transmission.